Transmission continues to be nominal.
RTLS chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight downside, SCE off. Say again, SCE off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Good morning or good evening, everybody, depending on where you're watching from the world. We are not watching a Falcon 9 right now. We are watching the moon, which will be the target for today's launch on the HAKUTO-R mission, which is launching from SLC-40 today at Cape Canaveral. We will be here for this mission to answer all your questions you might have regarding this, and we use a nice keyword in this case, because I'm not alone here on this broadcast. I'm with some people that I want to introduce you to now, and the first one I want to introduce is Mr. Chris Gebhardt. How are you doing, Chris?
I am doing just fine indeed, and ready for our second launch to the moon in less than a month.
Indeed, quite a moon month, or a moon time, you could say. So that's always exciting. And also in the field we have Julia. I believe there might be some communications issue with Julia, but she is in the field. She might join us later. In the background, pushing all the buttons and doing the broadcast for today, we have Kevin Michael Reed. And joining us later on commentary and also operating a camera for this, we have Thomas Burkhardt. And also in the background, operating some of the robots and tracking is Michael Baylor.
The full
As
team
always,
assembled.
Yeah, what a team for this late at night, and props to you all for staying up because it's not a nice time.
Well,
as always,
time of day doesn't govern lunar physics and plane alignments, so yep.
That would be nice, right? To just have like, sorry, can't do it. 11 p.m. would be okay. As always, make sure to tag at NASASpaceflight in chat so we can see all your questions you have regarding this mission. But for now, Chris, want to give us a mission overview of this?
Yeah, I would indeed, because I actually want to start with what happens after the liftoff. And I know we will want to talk about the actual liftoff because of a return to launch site landing. But let's talk about the mission first and the payloads that are on board, because as the ticker at the bottom says, this is a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket scheduled to take the HAKUTO-R mission to space, specifically to a very high energy elliptical orbit that will help transfer the primary payload, which is the HAKUTO-R lunar lander from iSpace, into a very, very, very energy efficient trajectory. And this is a photograph of HAKUTO-R as it was being encapsulated inside the Falcon 9 payload fairing. And if it looks small in that photograph, it's because it is. The lander itself is only 2.3 meters tall and 2.6 meters wide, and has a dry mass before they load propellant onto it of only 340 kilograms. So this is very, very small indeed. And this is in large part why the Falcon 9 can actually perform a return to launch site while still having enough propellant in the second stage to fling this spacecraft out on its trajectory. And you can see here in this video from iSpace that the lander is indeed very small. And this is actually a holdover from the Google Lunar X Prize. And I do just want to take a brief moment to say that we are go for propellant loading at this point. So teams on the launch teams have completed their go, no go polls, and everything is go to proceed with the start of the auto sequence and the start of fueling of the Falcon 9. But back to this particular payload. So this was originally part of iSpace's entry into the Google Lunar X Prize, and they actually had a lander ready to go. They had a mission and a rocket that it was going to launch with as a rideshare, and then that big main satellite got delayed and then eventually got canceled, and the launch got canceled. And iSpace, who was on tap to do really, really well in that particular Google Lunar X Prize, then didn't have a rocket to launch it, and that became an issue for them. And eventually they were able to repurpose and get a ride on Falcon 9. And if they land on the moon after their long cruise out there, they would be the first private lunar exploration mission, again, if they land. So a really cool piece of technology here from iSpace. But let's also talk a little bit about the trajectory that it's going to take, because this directly applies to the launch. So Kevin, I think we have, yes, here we go. So let's talk a little bit about this. Because what Falcon 9 is trying to do tonight with the second burn that it will do 40 minutes and 2 seconds after liftoff, this is a 56-second burn, and this is to throw HAKUTO-R into its high-energy elliptical orbit. And this will basically throw the orbit out to about 1.5 million kilometers from Earth, and set up an overall trajectory that, while it takes a really long time to reach the moon, this mission won't land for about 4.5 months. It is incredibly energy efficient and propellant saving. So the lander doesn't have to use a lot of propellant in order to alter its trajectory and fine tune its trajectory before arriving at the moon at a relative velocity to the moon that allows for an efficient capture. So there'll be a series of maneuvers that they do along the way, but basically this all sets up for a landing 4.5 months after liftoff. And that is the primary thing driving the overall trajectory here today. So that is a very brief overview of the trajectory to get them there. And then, of course, once they enter lunar orbit, they will spend about 2 weeks in lunar orbit demonstrating that they can maneuver and have steady state operations there before beginning the powered descent to the lunar surface. Which would first involve a braking maneuver to lower the overall orbital perigee closer to the lunar surface, and then a powered descent where they would actually kill all of their forward momentum as seen here in this diagram, and then basically do a powered descent using the fine maneuvering thrusters instead of the main engine there for a nice soft touchdown on the moon with those legs that can actually cushion part of the final descent for shock absorption. And then once it's on the moon, it has its mission of its own to perform as a test bed. And then also there is a little rover from the United Arab Emirates and the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center on board. But we'll get to all that more in depth right now. 33 minutes and counting. I think Falcon 9 is propellant loading, right, Adrian?
That is correct. The launch auto sequence has started, which means we are a bit away still from seeing venting, but we will see vent. I mean, I think we can see venting on the right side, but it's not on the rocket yet. So this rocket is now alive and getting prepared for this mission. Also, that's my name, Adrian. I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. How typical. And yeah, I guess it's time to dive right into questions here, because we got some here. And is this the first lunar lander that is launching on a Falcon 9?
Great question. No, the Bereshit lander from an Israeli private company was the first lunar lander that lifted off on a Falcon 9. So no, not the first. And also not the second lunar mission for Falcon 9 either. The Korean lunar mission, which launched also on a Falcon 9 as well.
And I will throw this next one to Thomas. Thomas, we should have you on commentary if I see that correctly, because this is also
sure do.
Hello.
Hi,
and
Adrian.
hello. This is another question about firsts for this mission, because we are in the age of RTLS right now, And this is asking about landing zone 2. Is this the first time Falcon 9 is landing on landing zone 2?
As a matter of fact, it is. Most of the time, they aim for the slightly larger and more often used landing zone 1. But given the other RTLS mission that happened just a couple days ago, that landing zone is already taken. It's possible that they could have secured the previous Falcon 9, got it off the pad, and had the pad clear. But my guess is, since these two missions were both scheduled pretty close to one another for a while, they played it safe and set up the trajectory on the flight computers and everything to plan for landing zone 2, so that in the event that they launched even closer together than they already are, they would have that option ready for them. So first Falcon 9 landing on landing zone 2, and all of the other previous landings, the previous 4, were all Falcon Heavy side boosters.
Nice, and also nice that we see some venting there from TE. So you can see some white condensation there coming from the rocket, very much in fueling. That's good. And then a question here about Artemis 1. Is this the same trajectory they are using for the Artemis 1 mission? Chris, is it the same trajectory?
That is a great question. No, so it's not the same trajectory as Artemis 1 employed. However, it is very similar to what the KPLO, the Korean lunar or orbiter mission earlier this year, and the Capstone CubeSat from Rocket that launched on a Rocket Lab mission. It's similar to the transfer orbits that they've been using, these very long, highly efficient transfer orbits. The one that Artemis ended up using, Artemis got to the moons and the lunar vicinity and did its close approach within 100 kilometers of the lunar surface within 6 days of liftoff. To swing itself into the distant retrograde orbit that it was in, which did take about 26 days. They did half of a distant retrograde orbit lap and then came back for that 26. So not the same trajectories at all in this regard.
Fact. And there's I'm gonna throw this to you, Thomas. Trent is asking about the recovery of this, since we were just at the point with RTLS. Why don't SpaceX just sell their barges and only use landing zone 1 and 2 for these landings?
Great question. Yeah, so the recovery method for the first stage of Falcon 9 depends on the mission parameters. The two main ones are how heavy the payload is, how much mass it has, and also where it's going. And those two things basically dictate how much energy the rocket has to exert on the payload to get it to where it needs to go. If it's a really light payload, the Falcon 9 can save some more energy in the form of propellant to perform boost back burns and landing burns at the landing zones. If it's a little bit more massive, or if it's going to a more energetic orbit, such as not a low Earth orbit, but a elliptical orbit like today's flight usually, or something even going to deep space or something, then you would require the Falcon 9 to use a little bit more propellant energy on its trajectory, and will not have as much to save for a boost back burn, so it'll land downrange or even possibly be expended in extreme cases. Today's flight, while it is going on a very highly energetic elliptical orbit towards the moon, the payload is very, very light. So the combination of those two things results in Falcon 9 being capable of delivering the payload while the first stage can still save enough fuel to do a boost back burn and land at Cape Canaveral. There are lots of missions, however, that require more energy than that. So why do they have the drone ships? For things like Starlink missions, where a huge stack of Starlink satellites is very heavy payload, and it would be much more expensive to launch the rocket more times to launch less satellites per launch than it is to recover the first stage downrange and launch more satellites at once. A lot of missions going out to geostationary transfer orbit, like big ComSats and things, could not be done on RTLS trajectories. The satellites are too heavy and going into high energetic orbits. Also, even the Crew Dragon missions require drone ship landings because the trajectory that Crew Dragon takes and the mass of the Crew Dragon spacecraft, required for crew safety and things like that, requires energy that would prevent a RTLS. So there you go.
And there's an interesting comparison that we can make here too between different variants of the Falcon 9 to illustrate how they can land and how they can be recovered. We were talking about the RTLS profile, which I think we've got a map of what that looks like here for today. And this is courtesy of Declan and Flight Club. Thank you very much, Declan. This is a great program if you're ever interested in like planning out trajectories. Definitely recommend going over and taking a look and supporting the great work that Declan does, because it really is a lot of work to get these trajectories spot on as he does. But this is what the Falcon 9 Block 5 tonight is capable of doing with HAKUTO-R, which is 340 kilograms in mass dry, so a little bit more than that with its fuel on board. But this booster on a Block 5 is able to perform an RTLS landing. Several years ago, when a Block 3 Falcon 9 launched the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, which is 362 kilograms, so essentially the same, only 22 kilograms more, and that was TESS's actual wet launch mass. And the Falcon 9 second stage for TESS did a burn to send it on its lunar transfer trajectory for 52 seconds, and it's going to do a 56-second burn for HAKUTO-R. Difference being, the test stage had to land on the drone ship downrange. The Falcon 9 Block 5, with the upgrades to the Merlins, can save enough propellant to actually perform the boost back burn and come back to LZ2 in this case.
Got it. Thank you. And I'm gonna hit some super chats here. As always, thank you for supporting our cause here. And Musical Wolves, a very regular name here. After this launch, does this mean Falcon 9 can join the Lunar Rocket Club? Well, it joined this club before already, but it can join a second time, basically. Do you join the club a second time? Yeah, rejoin.
Rejoin, yes.
Musical Wolves also with another super chat here. If Falcon 9 can put HAKUTO-R in lunar orbit, can we expect SpaceX to use a Falcon 9 to put a few Starlings into lunar orbit?
So a good caveat here. So Falcon 9 is not actually putting HAKUTO-R into lunar orbit. It's not even technically doing a translunar injection burn. The reason for this is HAKUTO-R is not big enough to carry the amount of fuel that it would need to do the retrograde burn to capture into lunar orbit. In that regard, so it has to take this very low energy transfer so that it's arriving at the right time, at the right angle with the moon to be able to utilize the fuel that it has for lunar orbit insertion and lunar orbit capture. And I want to stress that because the Starlings are very similar, right? The Starlings do have thrusters that can maneuver them, and they can raise their orbits, obviously, from their insertion orbits of 350 kilometers up to their operational orbits of 550 kilometers. But they use very low thrust to weight HAL thrusters, basically ion thrusters, and if you were to throw Starlinks into a translunar injection, they wouldn't have the delta V to slow down, so they would have to take these very weird transfer orbits if you just flung them all out together, or you would have to create a way to mount them to a transfer stage that could stay alive with battery or solar power for the transfer, and then be able to reignite to do those capture burns and then get you into the resonance orbit or the deployment orbit you would want in low lunar orbit. It's probably a more complicated answer than you were expecting, but there it is.
It's always these questions that suddenly spark a huge answer because sometimes it's complicated.
As with space, physics is unforgiving. You just have to go with it.
Moldy Space Industries with 5 Red Team memberships here. So if you got a Red Team membership from Moldy here, make sure to thank them in chat, as we do here. And also another question here, which is about the other RTLS landing we just had, which is will the booster from 2 days ago be visible on landing, or was it already removed? Probably a question for Thomas, because I'm not sure. Is it removed?
I don't know. Unfortunately, the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station is a pretty big place, and even though I've been driving through and sitting here right now, didn't drive past the landing zone. So I don't actually know for sure, but I would speculate that it is still there. And the only way
So,
to find out will be to watch the onboard cameras as it comes back, right?
in a way, except Alex is confirming in our back channel to us that the booster is off the pad, but still at the complex in the booster stand. So it's there, but it's not on the pad itself. So
Okay.
what you just said, Thomas, is still a possibility. It is still a possibility that the onboard cameras from this booster will see the one that landed a few days ago. Yeah.
That'll be cool, hopefully.
Yeah.
This
What if they could
question here
turn
gives.
on...
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what if they could turn on the onboard cameras of the booster that's sitting there, so that we have extra camera views of the landing? I don't know.
Just two
maybe
boosters
that's
pointing. It's the
wildly optimistic.
Spider-Man meme. Like,
Yeah.
Is that the most expensive remote in the history of remotes? Like
You
deploying
have
a
to launch
rocket
an entire
stage?
Falcon 9 mission to set up a remote camera, yeah.
yes.
It's like, don't worry, we have a remote there. What remote? The booster. Great.
But I
And-
do actually, Adrian, if it's all right, take a moment to talk about something that's happening in the countdown right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because right now, RP1 kerosene loading is wrapping up and has actually wrapped up into stage 2. So in stage 2, they load RP1 kerosene first, and now they stop like they have now. And in 40 seconds, there will be a large event called the T-minus 20-minute event, and that is basically them getting the transporter erector purged and ready for the transition to begin loading liquid oxygen into stage 2. And that's different from stage 1, where both liquid oxygen and RP1 kerosene are loaded simultaneously. So that is a big visual that we are about to see here in 10 seconds, because it should be 20 and 22 seconds that event begins.
Always a good sign at a countdown when we.
And it started right on time. Yes.
There it is.
See, you can make those bold predictions of in exactly 10 seconds when it's all automated like this.
And when there's how many Falcon 9 launches that have already happened, like, we know exactly what to expect. The spreadsheet would be pretty well refined at this point, right, Adrian?
Oh yeah, that you would be at the spreadsheet. You would talk about milliseconds at this point. But like,
I was just
they're
going to say that too.
5 milliseconds late. This is something wrong with SpaceX. Also, this question gives me a good opportunity to talk about something cursed here. Are they going to decorate for the Falcon 9 for Christmas? Probably not, but I would love a red Falcon 9. Just one for Christmas. I would love that. But I'm probably alone with that, and people are going to tell me that's awful.
You never know.
There's a very specific question here. I'm not sure if anybody of you knows the answer, but I'm just gonna throw it out because it's super specific. Has the United States ever sent a spacecraft to the moon while a spacecraft was on its way back from the moon?
Oh.
And I have no idea. That's
Has the
very
United States ever
specific.
sent a spacecraft to the moon while a spacecraft is on its way back from the moon? I honestly don't think so. I think this might be the first time that something like that is happening and coinciding, because yes, the big thing is we are at this point approximately 10 hours away from the landing of Artemis 1 and the return of Orion. So yeah, it is. When we say it's Moonapalooza, we mean it here. You know, for having let the moon fall by the wayside for several decades, it is a salvo that we are beginning to send, and it will not end next year. It will only increase.
Yay, moon.
Moon.
Exactly.
It's really like a year of the moon. I like all of these moon missions. quick question here I can actually answer. What are the 4 towers surrounding the rocket and why are the blinking lights in such an odd sequence? Good question. There is a video about that we did. Why do towers surround rocket launches? I will link it in chat. You can watch this after this launch. Don't do it right now. Watch this. But for after this launch, you can do that to inform yourself about the 4 lightning protection towers. And Chris, I'm gonna throw a question here from me to you, which is there's multiple payloads here, including the Rashid rover. Wanna tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit here about HAKUTO-R as the lander itself, but it as the lander actually includes the Rashid lunar rover from the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center of the United Arab Emirates. This is a small little rover. It's only 10 kilograms in mass, and it is very, very small. It is only 53.5 centimeters or 21.1 inches tall, and it is almost equally as wide. It is 53.8 centimeters or 21.2 inches wide. A very little rover. It is the first United Arab Emirates mission going to the moon. It holds 2 high-resolution cameras, one for up-close detailed imagery and investigation, and one for thermal imagery and investigation. It also includes a Langmuir probe that will help study the moon's overall plasma field, and it will also help try to answer the question, and I love this, of why moon dust is sticky, which if we can understand that, we can better build future rovers and different equipment and modules that we would end up sending to the moon. So that could really be helpful to the longer term exploration of the lunar surface, especially human lunar exploration. Another amazing thing about the rover itself, it was originally slated to launch in 2024 and got pulled forward by a year and a half to launch with HAKUTO-R here on the Falcon 9. So that's incredible. Most things in spaceflight do not move forward. They move backward, and they certainly almost never move forward by a year and a half. So that is an incredible feat from them as well. And like I said, too, this will be their first time, United Arab Emirates' first time going to the moon, but they are already at Mars with the Al-Amal weather probe around Mars. And in spring, they will actually have one of their astronauts on board SpaceX Crew 6 mission for a long-duration flight to the International Space Station. So the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center and UAE definitely continuing to demonstrate that they're not just here for the short term. They are aiming to be a very big player in the overall space community here and our initiatives going forward.
And also an interesting order there, right? Starting with Mars, then going to the moon, and then space station.
Yeah, it's usually station, moon, then Mars is what you aim for in that regard. But yeah, very interesting ordering for them there.
Sounds like a fun KSP challenge. Like start with the furthest out, and then move in.
On
And
Pluto first.
yeah. Basically,
Land
you
on
have to
Pluto,
do that
yes.
first.
Your first orbital mission must land on Pluto.
Oh god, that sounds like an actually challenging challenge. I kind of want to do that now. Noted.
But it's also worth mentioning there's another payload on board. There are others on board as well. Japan has a small satellite on board. They have described it as being the size of a baseball, but they have really not elaborated beyond that to what their satellite is on board. But NASA certainly has elaborated about theirs because the Lunar Flashlight CubeSat from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is also on board the Falcon 9. It will separate independently. It is not on board the rover. It is a ride share, so it will separate independently from the rover. But the Lunar Flashlight CubeSat was originally manifested for the Artemis 1 mission, but was unable to meet the original deadline in 2021 when the CubeSats were needed for integration, so it missed the Artemis 1 mission and had to find another ride. It bounced around and basically was waiting for the first available one that could take it, and that ended up being HAKUTO-R. So it is on board today. And interestingly, because of the delays that Artemis 1 suffered and the detrimental effect that had on the CubeSats, that might actually mean that Lunar Flashlight stands a far better chance of succeeding in its mission than had it actually made it onto Artemis 1. And it's a pretty cool experiment. It's going to use lasers to peer down into the lunar South Pole and some of the craters down there from a paraloon closest orbital approach to the lunar surface of 15 kilometers, 1.5, and it'll use lasers to try to find signs of water ice in those permanently shadowed regions. So another really exciting CubeSat on board this particular rocket tonight.
This feels like the space equivalent of missing the first bus, but the second is right behind it. So it's they found the ride very soon after.
I mean, yeah, they ended up launching less than a month after Artemis 1, and yeah, and like I said, like kind of unfortunate for the rest of them, this one might actually stand the best chance of succeeding.
That's good for them.
It is for
not
it.
for the
Yes,
other one.
yeah. Well, and for what it's trying to do too, because it's looking for water ice in the area that we want to land and establish the bases and establish the presences there. So that very important in that regard.
Yeah, having water there would certainly make some things, such as getting water there and also production of some propellants, way easier. So that would be nice. And I'm gonna hit some super chats here, and we have Space In and Out saying, "Sitting at the stands at the port, wind is blowing from the pad, so it will be loud tonight. Enjoy the launch." And I hope it will be loud. That sounds like a good thing to have during a rocket launch. Also, a $10 super chat here from SA. Happy launch morning, all. It's indeed. The sun just showed itself here in Germany, so it's indeed morning. Roseanne with a $9.99 super chat. Bless you for your patience answering previously answered questions for newbies. We are always happy to do that because not everybody already is watching their 50th rocket launch. The first one is equally important.
As we say, there's no such thing as bad questions. And yes, we always encourage you, even if you fear that the question has been asked before, always ask it again. Because if you're wondering it, chances are there are a lot of other people watching who are also wondering the same thing.
Yep. Also, G Forbes here with $19.99 super chat. Thank you a lot. Just a note of thanks for streaming through all the hours of the night and day and morning and evening. Thank you a lot. And speaking of things that we do here, we also have another way you can support us here, which is our amazing 2023 calendar that we have in store for you. You can see it right here with both of the versions we have and all the fancy and amazing pictures that our photographers took of Starship, but not only Starship, but also Delta, SLS, Falcon 9. And if you want to have that on your wall, make sure to order it right now. It still would arrive in time for 2023. And speaking of things that would arrive in time for 2023, we recommend that if you want to have your things before Christmas, that includes shirts, hoodies, and more, then we recommend ordering today in shop.nasaspaceflight.com, because if you don't order today, it might not arrive in time for Christmas. So if you want to gift somebody, for example, the second calendar you get when you use the discount here, if you buy two calendars, then we recommend ordering today. So make sure to check out the shop at the store, shop at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. My God, I can talk. And with that, we are only 8 minutes and 40 seconds away from the liftoff of this mission.
Yeah, it is a beautiful night / morning / whatever you want to call it. I didn't go to sleep yet, so it's still nighttime as far as I'm concerned. But it's a beautiful night here on the Space Coast. Falcon 9 is nice and frosty, and the sky is pretty clear. Just a little bit of haze here and there, but the sky's pretty clear. Got a nice bright moon in the sky as well. So, looking forward to seeing some RTLS visuals for tonight. Should be a great night to go to space.
It should
And the-
indeed. So let's talk just a little bit about what we're going to expect there. After a liftoff here, just under 8 minutes from now, there'll be a 2-minute, 13-second ascent with the first stage engines firing, at which point we will have a booster engine cutoff, followed shortly thereafter by stage separation. Almost simultaneously, there will be the ignition of the second stage Merlin vacuum optimized engine and the reignition of 3 engines on the booster 1073-5, to begin its boost back burn. And that is what usually creates the incredible plume, a gorgeous plume interaction, especially at night. So Thomas, can't wait to see what you are able to capture of that boost back burn, because those are always the stunning interactions.
But just to clarify here, because we got that question, there will not be a jellyfish tonight, right? Because it's in the middle of the night and there's no like light interaction.
Unless
No.
the moonlight lights it up a little bit, it won't be nearly the same. But there is another light source in the sky tonight, so we'll see.
Yes. But I would agree with Thomas, not the jellyfish, but the nebula, which is what I was just talking about. Yes, so the nebula, the interaction of the plumes will definitely be the visual tonight. And I'm very glad to hear that it is relatively clear down there to see this, because, man, the 2 RTLSs, it's like they planned the timing of them.
We'll have 2 more OneWeb launches. We've got a transporter flight coming up. I know there's an RTLS over at Vandy coming up too. I like these RTLS missions.
Yeah, Moonapalooza, RTLS-apalooza. I mean, my gosh, SpaceX, just give us all the great hits you've been holding out on us for. But to just set some of the joking aside, right now they have opened some of the bleed valves for liquid oxygen and are allowing engine chill down to progress on the 9 Merlin engines on the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. This engine chill is to thermally condition the engines and get them into the proper start temperature ranges so that they are not thermally shocked at when all of those propellants begin flowing at engine ignition. So that is what is currently, or what is currently underway. Also, stage 1 RP1 kerosene load is complete. So the fuel closeouts for kerosene are complete at this time, with liquid oxygen loading continuing right now onto stage 1 and stage 2. And that should wrap up about 2.5 minutes prior to the intended liftoff time, which is 2:38 and 13 seconds Eastern Standard Time, or 7:38 and 13 seconds UTC.
One quick more question about sticky regolith. Kichi is asking, is regolith dust sticky only on the moon surface, or are also the samples on Earth sticky? That's the question I asked because I have no idea, and I'm curious now if that is known.
I know this
It's
one.
everywhere. You go, Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not specific to the lunar environment. It's the material itself of lunar regolith is inherently sticky. And when we say sticky, it's not sticky like to itself, like it doesn't clump necessarily, but it sticks to other things. So stuff you have out on the surface or you put in lunar regolith, the regolith will often stick to it. So that's what we're talking about. And that still occurs even if you bring it back to Earth. And here on Earth, we have a lot of simulants that are very close to lunar regolith that we use for testing stuff for the moon. And that same phenomenon happens here on Earth.
And the other thing too with that is that, it's not just, right, Thomas, that it sticks to everything. It's hard to describe how sharp it is. It's not like sand. It's very abrasive. It's almost like the stuff you would put on saws or grinders, almost.
Yep.
Like if you think of it that way, it is incredibly abrasive. So if we can figure out why it's sticky, because it sticks to things, that really helps reduce the wear and the tear on the rovers and on the equipment that gets sent to the moon.
And just as a side note here, because the TE as the strong back retraction is underway here, so that's one of the like final steps before the rocket is ready to launch. So you could see that's now like it's hard to see from this angle, but it will start moving, or it moved a bit backward now. So it's no longer right next to the rocket.
Indeed, it is not, and you can see the vapors streaming from Falcon 9 itself, as well as the vapors coming from the transporter erector here. But 2 minutes 50 seconds to go. This is getting close. Stage 1 liquid oxygen load is complete at this time. Stage 2's is wrapping up as well, so there should be one more big purge vent from the transporter erector coming up momentarily.
Yeah,
Love
we are
these
getting to the
indicators.
business end. We're
Sorry,
getting
Dad.
to the business end here, so I'm gonna do my best with the tracking. I'll try to follow that stage 1 up to space and back, and I'll leave you with Chris and Adrian for your liftoff commentary. Talk to you in a bit.
Good luck with the tracking, Thomas, and we will for sure enjoy it.
Thanks, sir.
Indeed, it is, and as we say, as we see there, ticking under the 2-minute mark in the count, heading toward liftoff here. A very busy final minute for the auto sequence for Falcon 9 here, but so far so good, with a good range, good weather, and a happy rocket. And stage 2 liquid oxygen load is complete, and there is our final big purge, Adrian, from the transporter erector there.
Yeah, there it goes. One of the last indicators to check, and also the rocket will turn into internal power in about 20 seconds. The spacecraft, just to point out, because that's mission specific, was turned to internal control a bit earlier, like I think around the 20-minute mark. So that's already internal, and now the Falcon 9 flight computers will take over in the startup. And once that, it's only the launch director that will verify go for launch, hopefully. And after that, it's go time. And I believe you will also step out in a bit, right, Chris, to see this?
I will. So I'll call the liftoff, but then I'm going to step out to watch it. So Falcon 9 is in startup. Tanks are pressurizing to flight levels. Falcon 9 has control of its countdown, and the launch director has given their final go for liftoff here. So 31 seconds and counting to the launch here of Falcon 9. If you are in Florida and it is clear you have a good shot of seeing this, it is going due east from the Kennedy Space Center, more or less, so you will have a good shot of seeing this. 15 seconds now, and counting. Sound suppression water is being turned on to deaden the sound on the launch pad, and here we go. 5,
Watch
4,
for the green flash.
3, 2, 1, and there is a liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket with iSpace's HAKUTO-R and the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center's Rashid Lunar Rover to the moon.
And here we go. What a liftoff, and what a sound. That sounded especially awesome today.
It really did coming through the microphones there. Falcon 9 doing its thing and heading downrange. This is the part that I love, Adrian, where you can see the plume expanding in the upper
Yeah.
atmosphere
You,
without
you
the oh, look at that. Look at that.
I love how you can like see all the 9 engines.
Yes.
It's very distinct. Ah, that's so cool.
And we're coming up here about 10 seconds to stage engine cutoff here, and then separation and the boost back burn, and that's what will produce the visually stunning nebula. So there is stage engine
Here's
cutoff.
Miko.
We have separation. We'll get stage 2 ignition first. There should have been stage 2. Now we're seeing some of the onboard cameras from the Falcon 9 itself there. But there it is.
Oh.
There it is. That is the interaction of stage 2 and stage 1. You can see stage 2 flying away and stage 1 producing that epic cloud. Oh my gosh, look at that, Adrian.
That's I was speechless there for a moment. That's stunning. Wow.
It's like a nebula. It's a roiling nebula. It's the only way I can describe it, what it looks like and what it's doing.
That's just stunning.
Oh.
Amazing visuals. Wow.
Absolutely, look at it. And this is the booster using its force and its thrust to first kill all of its downrange velocity, and now changing the shape of its trajectory to arc itself back to the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and to the landing zone. So you've got the booster doing its boost back burn on the left, just ending there. And then you've got the Falcon 9 second stage firing on the right, now all on camera there, but booster 1 telemetry is on the bottom left. Second stage telemetry to orbit is on your right.
So
Look at that altitude increase for the booster too.
I'm curious here, Chris. Do you hear the sonic booms from where you are?
I will indeed. I will hear the rumble of the actual liftoff about T plus 6 minutes 30 seconds, and then we should hear the sonic booms as well.
Nice.
Yes.
That's so cool.
It is.
Yeah, looking good so far. That's always good if there's nothing out of the ordinary at this point.
It is, and just for some of you who might be new to Falcon 9 launches, you might see little things floating by the engine nozzle here on stage 2. That's totally normal. It's usually just chunks of ice that are coming off different parts of the engine section here, and chunks is a bad word. It's really like a thin sheet layer of ice that comes off, so nothing to worry about if you do see anything there. But Adrian, what I love about this is you can see the booster is falling now. So stage 1, there we go. So there's this. Well,
That's
there's the
stage
camera
2, right?
waiting for it.
Oh, that's the moon. Oh, wow.
In that regard, yeah. But what I love about this visual is you can see the booster falling back to Earth. Its altitude going down, its speed increasing. So it's going to need to do that entry burn to help itself slow down, but you can also see stage 2 continuing to fire, taking the lander into its initial orbit. They're looking for an initial orbital insertion speed of about 27 to 28,000 kilometers per hour. So quite a ways to go there. And just look at that. Just look at that booster's velocity increasing as it comes basically straight down into the atmosphere at this point.
And I love how it will soon protect itself with fire. Like we come up on the entry burn, where it will kind of almost shield itself with just igniting its engine again, which is so cool. It's such a cool part of this whole thing, and of course it will also slow itself down because you don't want to hit the atmosphere as fast as they're doing right now.
Indeed, and what I love about this too is you'll see obviously the speed will decrease when the engines fire, but then you will actually see after the entry burn how the air will grip the booster, and actually the air resistance will then start slowing it down. But oh my gosh, look at this, lights from Florida and everything underneath the booster as it's coming back to the Space Center. Look at that. There is
There it
the entry
is.
burn from our cameras. Look at that, Adrian.
That's unbelievable. I love these views. I mean, we are talking about such a big object that is just controlling itself flying through the air. That's amazing.
It really is. And then there's the view from the onboard cameras of what just happened. Then, like I said, you'll see that speed increase a little bit more, and then it'll start to drop. And you can just see the entire shape of the Cape, the southern portion of the Cape and Merritt Island. They're absolutely stunning. Watching this booster come back in. And you were
So
actually
if you are in that
asking-
area, you can right now wave to the camera.
You can, and I mean, the sonic booms are about to hit for people in the Central Florida area as the booster comes in for its landing.
It looks steady so far. Landing burn should come up any sec. There it is. Landing burn. Now they will deploy the legs in a bit.
Yep. It's killing all of that final velocity for a nice gentle touchdown.
Oh. Legs. And that's a touchdown. Welcome back to Earth.
That is indeed. And Adrian, did you catch that you could see what looked like some of the thrusters firing there at the top of the booster as it was landing from Thomas's camera?
Yeah, it looked like they would do some late landing balancing there, and make sure that everything is perfectly aligned. But yeah, they fired for sure. That was thrusters firing. That was cool to see. It almost looked like they were on fire because of the flames reflecting into the thrusters. So that looked cool.
It really did indeed. And you can see here that is the rover. That is HAKUTO-R on top of the Falcon 9, and there has been SECO 1 or stage engine cutoff 1 where the Merlin vacuum engine has shut down as initially intended there. And there you can see the overall arc of the orbits as intended, but with the booster back in stage 2 on its way, it's a bit of a coast, right, Adrian, to the next ignition here?
Yeah, it's 40. Like they will ignite the second stage at 40 minutes into the timeline, so we are still about 30 minutes away of that. So
yeah, indeed.
Let me hit some of more of our super chats here, because we had 5 Red Team memberships from Tracy gifted to the chat, and also 5 from Dougal. So make sure, if you're one of the receiving members here, make sure to thank them, because that's always cool. You gotta enjoy all of these perks we have ready for you on the YouTube channel, such as exclusive pictures and behind the scenes content. So make sure to check that out. Katie with 5 pounds here. It's my birthday with a Falcon 9 launch and landing, Orion splashdown, 3,002 Starlings in operational orbits, and 50 years since I saw Apollo 17 lunar landing. Happy birthday.
There we go. That's quite a birthday. A Falcon 9 launch and landing, and Orion coming back from its distant retrograde orbit. So, whew, yeah.
And also Ron here with another Capcom membership. That gives you access to our Discord. So make sure to join us at Discord and enjoy the discussion there. Here we have another moonshot. We see kind of the destination of this mission here. So that's a cool shot. An empty pad at the moon. But folks, I believe that's gonna conclude it for us, because we will put down our live coverage here, Chris.
Yeah, because so Falcon 9 is currently in a coast. It'll reignite that second stage engine at 40 minutes, 2 seconds into the flight for a 56-minute burn to inject the HAKUTO-R lunar lander and the lunar flashlight CubeSat into their energy-efficient transfer orbits to the moon, and that burn would then set up the overall ability for HAKUTO-R lander to enter orbit of the moon about 4 months from now, and then attempt a landing 4.5 months from now if everything is going to plan. But yes, a gorgeous launch and landing of the Falcon 9 here tonight.
And just to go through who we had on for this broadcast, we had, of course, Kevin Michael Reed in the background pushing all the levers and buttons for this broadcast. So thank you a lot for that, Kevin. We had Mr. Michael Baylor with the tracking shots here of the robots. Thank you for that, Michael. We had Julia on earlier in the field. We had Thomas with the tracking today and with commentary. We had you, Chris. Thanks for being here, Chris.
My absolute pleasure. Anytime we launch to the moon.
And I was Adrian, and I was your host for today. And with that, we are gonna end this. Have a nice day, everybody, and enjoy your Sunday.